love Pokemon. I've loved it all my life, even though I only started playing the actual games when I was 13. Since then, I've always been among the first to buy every new major game of the franchise. However, one game I played stands out from all the others. One dark, horrifying game that changed the way I play Pokemon forever. The game I have called Pokemon Yellow Diamond. The story begins when I decided I needed a good dose of nostalgia for some emotional relaxation. I had decided to buy a used copy of the first Pokemon game I ever played, Pokemon Diamond. I had loaned my original copy to my cousin, and knowing him, he had lost it long ago. So I turned to the always reliable internet to find a good, working copy. I was shocked by how expensive the games were on Amazon. I searched endlessly for a diamond game less than $30. I didn't bother to search for a new one. The possibility of one being new and never played was as good as none. Suddenly, one game caught my eye. $5? Excitement grabbed me instantly. I didn't consider at all that it might be too good to be true. That will soon be revealed to be a mistake. Without much thought, I bought it. Days later, I received the package. I was surprised to see when I opened the cardboard envelope, I found a box for a DS game. The box had no game art. Instead, it had a crudely drawn picture of a Master Ball drawn with a highlighter. I thought little of it though. I opened the case and was relieved to see the Pokemon Diamond game cartridge inside. Something about it caught my eye though. The game sticker appeared to have been smeared by a highlighter, making it a shade of yellow. All I thought was that I hoped whoever owned this before me did not damage it. I didn't care what the cartridge looked like. As long as it worked, that was all that mattered. I stuck the precious game into my 3DS and started it up. To my delight, the nostalgia feels surged through me upon seeing the startup sequence. I couldn't wait to see Dialga's blue, swirling silhouette on the screen along with the game title. However, what I saw disappointed me. I saw the title, but no Dialga. This was a bit of a letdown, but nothing serious. I pressed A, and what happened next caught me off guard. I was immediately brought to Professor Rowan's introduction. The thought crossed my mind that this game might by some miracle be a diamond game never played. But then I thought the previous owner must have deleted their save file before selling it. The experience was just as nostalgic as I hoped it would be. It felt good playing the now vintage game. I loved going through the story as I did on my first steps to being a Pokemon game fan. Little did I know, I was in for a really disturbing playthrough of a game nobody should have to play. It was when I first encountered Team Galactic in Jubilife City when I noticed something unusual happen. The grunts had cornered Professor Rowan, and I confronted them. However, I was surprised by the things they said. I can't remember what they said exactly, but I do know it wasn't the normal "we are businessmen" routine. Instead, they said things like, "Our Lord requires your data," and "In the name of God, you will do as we say." This was nothing like the comical space and time obsessed team I remembered from my past. Also, I never heard the word God mentioned in a Pokemon game. This was very odd. I teamed up with Lucas to fight them. When I defeated them, something else weird happened. Instead of their normal mischievous, cocky, arrogant speeches upon beating them, the only text they displayed was silence dots. Then they ran off. That was odd. I was sure the first encounter didn't go like that. Unable to do anything about it, I simply moved on. There was something else I noticed too. Some of the NPCs I talked to spoke of something unusual. They talked about a god. Like when I entered Floroma Town, the woman that greeted me said, "Welcome to Floroma Town, the town of rich, glorious plant life. We are forever grateful to our Creator, our God, for blessing us with this wonderful town." Odd, I thought. I could have sworn the woman said something a little different. I certainly didn't remember her saying the word God. Soon, I encountered Team Galactic again in the flower field. To my shock, they continued to say all those weird things, mentioning a god they seem to serve, and declaring they will not fail in their celestial mission. However, what really got me was the fact that they did not insult the character like they used to. They didn't call me a brat or give confident, smart-ass remarks. In fact, they seemed almost like they were broken. I can't put it any other way. When I defeated them, I made my way to the Windworks and unlocked the door. I then encountered a grunt at the front door. I then noticed through the rather unsettling, dramatic, and spiritual dialogue that the grunt referred to a noble. Noble? I thought the top-tier members of Team Galactic were known as commanders. I made my way through the Windworks and found the first Galactic Grunt encounter, where they confronted me with an exclamation bubble. I remember mostly what the grunt said. Something like, "I will devote all my life to our Lord's wish and intentions. In the name of Galactic, I shall end you forever." This dialogue from Team Galactic was starting to get to me. There was nothing I could do, though. My only option was to fight the grunt like nothing weird was going on. However, when I defeated him, something even more unnerving happened. Once I returned to the overworld, the silence dots appeared in the text box. Then, in bright red text, 2 words slowly appeared. I failed. Suddenly, I was startled by a loud, high-pitched noise from my 3DS. It sounded like the transporting noise that plays when you enter a new area, but louder, faster, and a higher pitch. The screen also shook for a split second, like when a Pokemon is poisoned, but much more violent. After that, I watched in bafflement as the Galactic Grunt sprite's color slowly faded to gray. I stared, confused about what just happened. This was definitely not normal. I realized this game I had bought must have been modified, hacked. Regardless, all this did was make me curious, at least at this point so far. I continued on. The other two galactic grunts I encountered did the same thing the first did. Upon defeat, they said in red text that they failed. The shaking displayed, and the high-pitched scratching noise sounded. Then their sprite became gray. Then, I reached Mars. What the Team Galactic commander said made me very uneasy. I am Mars, one of the three nobles of Galactic. We are devoting our lives to creating a whole new world. A perfect world, ruled by our one true master. No force shall ever intervene, especially not those against our ways, including you. Prepare to be eliminated. The battle began. Despite that freaky speech, the battle carried on like normal, and I easily defeated Mars. She responded merely with silence dots. Back in the overworld, Mars said, I failed, but because I am a noble, I still have a purpose. I will ask for forgiveness and prove I am still worthy and useful. I will accept my punishments and become stronger than before. I will not lose again. Mars then laughed, leaving me silent and staring in shock at her disquieting words. The way she was talking and the things she was saying were nothing like the original. I had no possible way to describe it though. All I could do was think it was odd and unsettling and move on in the game. When I entered Eterna City and challenged Team Galactic in the tall building blocked by cuttable trees, the grunts showed the same odd behavior, going on about their lord and master and how they would devote their lives to achieve their leader's noble goal. Whenever I defeated grunts that had no major role in the story, they would proclaim they failed, and the screen shake and high-pitched noise, which to me kind of sounded like scratching, would play, leaving the sprite of the grunt turning gray. At one point I tried to talk to the colorless, defeated grunt, but was only given the text, no response. I confronted Jupiter on the top floor, and she said something like this. Pokemon are the source of our power. We need them to accomplish our ultimate goal. We will take whatever we need from everyone. We will use Pokemon as we must in the name of our Heavenly Lord. I cannot let you take back these Pokemon we have taken. That speech was even more disturbing than Mars. Despite that, the battle carried on normally. Afterward, though, Jupiter said something similar to what Mars said when she lost, going on about how being a noble will give her a chance for forgiveness, that she still had a purpose, and her punishment will make her stronger. After that, she left along with the rest of her grunts. I was left stunned into silence once again. I realized I would dread encountering Team Galactic for the remainder of the game. After defeating Team Galactic in Eterna City, I was about to head to the bike shop when I decided to go to the statue of Dialga. Dialga was my most favorite legendary of all time. I wanted to see his statue and read the faded description. When I made my way to it though, I was surprised to see not a silver statue of Dialga, but a golden statue of a different, yet similar looking Pokemon. It took some close looks, but I finally realized the statue was not of Dialga, Palkia, or even Giratina. It was Arceus, known by the Pokemon community as the creator of the universe, the strongest Pokemon of all, the Pokemon God. I was disappointed to not find Dialga, but intrigued to find Arceus instead. I went up to the statue to read the text. It read like this: Arc, born before the universe itself, created everything in existence, power unparalleled, deals judgment, Arc, our God. Again, the word God was used in a Pokemon game. Not something I've seen in any others. Honestly, this made my uneasiness fade and perked my interest. Was this hat's game more focused on Arceus? Dialga made me my favorite, but Arceus wasn't acknowledged in the game as much as it should be, being the creator of the universe and all. I was honestly looking forward to what I would find next. Boy, was I ever wrong to think that. Soon, I entered Mount Coronet. If I remember correctly, this was where I was first to encounter Cyrus, the leader of Team Galactic. I was both curious and dreading what he would say to me. If his underlings were acting weird like this, I could only imagine what he would be like. However, to my utter disbelief, Cyrus's dialogue was as normal as before. He simply talked about a world where only time flowed and space expanded, and the weakness of the human spirit, just like he always did. For some reason, I found even this unchanged interaction frightening now. From the previous behavior of Team Galactic I had seen, I started to see Cyrus in a whole other way. A more serious, twisted way. As I progressed through the game, my encounters with Team Galactic continued to weird me out. By this point, I was finally able to describe them as submissive, obedient, unquestionably loyal, overly devoted, and just plain freaky. The unimportant grunts with no part in the story continued to go gray and unresponsive every time I defeated them. Those that actually had a place in the story progression would go on how they would beg their lords and nobles for forgiveness and endure their punishments to become stronger and worthy of being one of them. I also began to realize that Team Galactic was not even referring to themselves as a team. Even more so, whenever a person spoke of Team Galactic, they would describe them as if they were far worse and more terrifying than they were in the normal games, calling them insane, twisted, even brainwashed. The only one who seemed to not be any different was Cyrus. Not just that, it was less disturbing, but many of the NPCs I encountered continued to speak of a god they were eternally grateful to. The gym leaders were particularly outspoken about the entity. I still remember part of Gardenia's pre-battle speech. I am so grateful to the great creator to have brought grass Pokemon into the world. They are so beautiful, majestic, and glorious, truly a creation of a heavenly power. Out of all the characters, though, the one person who spoke most of the god was Cynthia. The things she said to me about the deity, I could only describe like how a priestess would preach about God. Clearly, Cynthia's devotion to this being, who I realized was most likely Arceus, was just as strong as Team Galactic's unsettling dedication to their leader. At this point, really, the only thing that was completely normal about the game was the Pokemon themselves. All encounters, captures, training, and battles proceeded like everything else was normal. It seemed the Pokemon were unaffected by all the oddities I was facing in this modified game. Now, things may have been unsettling, but nothing completely terrifying quite yet. Until I went to Lake Valor. The explosion went off, and I flew there to confront Team Galactic again. When I got there, I was met with a disturbing sight. The Magikarp that were usually flailing around in what was left of the lake were instead lying motionless in not pools of water, but pools of red. I couldn't believe it. Was that blood? Were the Magikarp dead? When I approached one, the text read, "No response." As I fought through the grunts, once again they stated that they failed and made that scratching noise and went gray. When I reached the cave, I confronted Saturn, who, just like Mars and Jupiter, sounded very different. He referred to himself as a noble, and said those freaking statements of undying devotion to his lord. He also stated that their lord's ambitions will come true no matter the cost. When I defeated him, he also said he would accept his punishment and devote himself to proving his usefulness. With that, he left. As I continued encountering Team Galactic at the other lakes, the lesser grunts continued to gray out, and Mars and Jupiter's hollow, unemotional dialogue further disturbed me. At this point, I started to wonder if they only saw themselves as tools to this lord of theirs. Could their lord be Cyrus? Well, I felt I was about to find out. I entered the galactic base, honestly worried by what I would encounter. I was right to worry. The base was dark it like it would be in a dark cave. I tried to use flash, but it didn't do anything. I had to proceed with limited vision. I quickly realized the layout of the base was nothing like the original. The grunts I defeated still grayed out. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out what on earth was happening to them. Suddenly, when I went up a flight of stairs, the music stopped playing, and I heard what sounded like Pokemon cries. Not normal ones, though. These were either dragged out in a very low pitch, or shrieking and painfully high-pitched. Honestly, it sounded like torture. I made my way through the halls and entered a large room. With the limited light, I couldn't see anything around me. I walked around, then bumped into something that made me gasp. There was a Skuntank sprite lying on the ground with what looked like a chain around its neck. Surrounding it was a puddle of red. I knew it had to be blood. All around the room, I saw not just Pokemon, but also members of Team Galactic chained up. Some weren't moving, but some were twitching. I approached the twitching Perugly, and it let out a low, slow, eerie cry, as if it were in terrible pain. I then approached the twitching Galactic member. He was also chained and had a pool of blood under him. I pressed A when I got in front of him. The text read, "I'm sorry. Please. It was wrong to beg for forgiveness. I know I have failed you. My purpose is over. I am no longer worthy. Just finish me. I am nothing." I was utterly dumbfounded. I felt myself shiver in horror. This is far worse than I ever imagined things would be. Could this be the punishments the commanders, or nobles as they were called in this game, were talking about? The only thing I could do was continue through the base to reach Cyrus. As I headed upward, I continued hearing distorted Pokemon cries and seeing bloody, chained Pokemon and Galactic members. Finally, I reached the top floor. The light returned to normal, and the room looked like how it did in the normal games. I confronted Cyrus, and to my shock, his dialogue, except for a few minor differences, was normal. That is, until after I beat him. I went through the text, and all seemed the same at first, until it started to change a bit. His eerie demeanor was still there, but I quickly realized something. He had not given me the Master Ball. After stating he made the power of Pokemon his own, he walked off, telling me if I wanted to save the lake Pokemon, to go to the warp panel. I did just that, and saw Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf were trapped in the usual machines. I was confronted by Saturn, but this time he spoke to me differently. He seemed angrier, more upset. However, his words were still eerie, further mentioning extreme devotion and obedience towards his lord. This time, however, he stated failure will not be forgiven this time. I battled him, secretly dreading what would happen once I beat him. When I did, I returned to the overworld. Saturn replied with silence darts. Then, in bright red text, he said, "No, this can't be happening. My purpose, my worthiness, it's all gone. I have failed." Suddenly, I heard the scratching noise I heard whenever I defeated the minor grunts. However, this one was at a lower pitch and quieter. The screen also shook less violently. I watched as Saturn's sprite began to become a grayer tone, but not fully lose its color quite yet. Saturn began to shake, then said in red text, "You may have defeated me, but you will not stop our god." A button press sound echoed. I assume he pressed the button to release the lake Pokemon. However, I was horrified to see the 3 Pokemon shake and heard the horrendous sounds of their cries. Distorted, high-pitched, and dragged out. Slowly, Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf, like all the galactic grunts I defeated, turned gray and stopped moving. Saturn spoke again. We had to kill them. We could not risk them interfering with our Lord's plan. Once they served their purpose, we had to dispose of them so they could not use their powers to stop us. What? Kill them? Did I read that right? Suddenly, another scratching noise erupted, and Saturn's sprite shook. His sprite became even more gray, and in red text he said, "You will not stop our Lord. Long live our God, Cyrus." Finally, Saturn's sprite lost every bit of its color and fell completely gray. I couldn't believe what was happening. Did I really hear him right? Were the lake Pokemon really dead? I hurried over to Uxie and pressed A. A text box appeared. Uxie is dead. Horrified, I ran to Azelf. Azelf is dead. I went to Mesprit too. Mesprit is dead. My mouth dropped open in terrified bewilderment. I had never seen or heard of anything being killed on screen in a Pokemon game. Yet there they were, the Lake Guardian Pokemon, faded to gray and lifeless. It was then that I had a shocking realization. All those galactic grunts I had beaten, who said they failed, caused that scratching sound and faded to gray. Did they all kill themselves? Did Saturn just kill himself? Most people probably would have stopped playing this game, broken the highlighted cartridge in 2, and threw it in the trash. I'm not like most people, though. I could take this horrendous content. Damn my curiosity. I had to find out what happened next. Determined to reach a conclusion, I headed for Mount Coronet, intent on facing the rest of Team Galactic and stopping their plan, whatever it was. I was beginning to fear what they were planning to do with Dialga, my favorite legendary. Well, I was about to find out. I entered Mount Coronet and continued to fight through galactic grunts. This time, however, I dreaded each and every battle, knowing it would result in the grunts' death by their own hands. My curiosity was strong enough to urge me to endure it. It felt like it took forever, but eventually I reached the mountain peak. What I found, though, was not what I expected. To my utter amazement, I saw an extremely high staircase standing in front of me, blocking the normal way to where Dialga would be. I realized this was the staircase the Azure flute made appear, the staircase you climb to reach Arceus. My horror turned to excitement in an instant, and I ran up the stairs. I should never have done that. As I ran up the stairs, I was met with horrifying sights. There were sprites of random NPCs that were completely gray. Some of them were missing their heads. I continued going up, and soon I was met with something else. Team Galactic sprites, all grayed out, some without heads, and some heads without bodies. I realized this staircase was much, much higher than it usually was, and the higher I climbed, the darker everything became. All except the staircase and bodies, everything around me was becoming black. Then, I noticed one particular sprite next to me. It was Saturn, his body on one side, his head on the other. A few more steps later, I finally reached the top of the stairs. There, Mars and Jupiter confronted me. This time, however, they were furious. Their dialogue was in all caps. Clearly, they were yelling at me. I can't remember what they said exactly, unfortunately. Soon Barry, my rival, one of the very few people who was utterly and completely the same as he was in the normal games, arrived to help me take down the last two commanders, or nobles. When we defeated them, I gripped the 3DS tightly, nervous about what would happen next. Mars and Jupiter shook. Then, in all caps, blood-red text, they screamed, "No!" What followed was a relentless barrage of screen shaking and high-pitched slashing noises. I realized this was not like the other grunt suicides. Mars and Jupiter were torturing themselves. After one last, horribly loud and distorted cry, the screen went black for a split second, and I saw Mars and Jupiter lying in pools of blood, their sprites now gray. At this point I was petrified. Yet to my shock, Barry carried on with his usual dialogue, healed my Pokemon, and fled. I stared in silence, doing nothing for a while, then sighed and continued forward. At last, I reached Cyrus, who was standing in the middle of where Arceus would normally be seen. Unbelievably, he spoke his usual dialogue, with one exception. Instead of calling out Dialga, he called out the creator of all things, the god of the universe, Arceus. I leaned in closer to the 3DS screen as Arceus appeared the same way Dialga and Palkia would in the normal games. Then, a box appeared that said something I didn't expect. Cyrus used the Master Ball. In a flash, Arceus disappeared. Cyrus had caught it. Cyrus then said, "Divine being or not, it is still a Pokemon. With its power, I shall become a true deity. A true god." He then let Arceus out of the Master Ball. Then he spoke of the red chain, and its animation appeared. He was taking control of Arceus. It was at this point that I realized something. In the normal game, Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie would arrive to stop Cyrus's actions. But they were dead. My heart started racing as Cyrus went on with his usual dialogue about creating a new world. What was going to happen next? I almost didn't want to know. The galaxy started forming. The part where the Lake Guardians would appear had come. Cyrus ended his dialogue. Then silence. Complete silence. No music, no sound, nothing. Then, a dialogue box appeared, and red text slowly, very slowly, spelled out a 3-letter word. Die. Then more text appeared. Arceus used judgment. An ungodly, distorted version of Arceus's cry exploded from the 3DS. The screen went white, not black, white. Slowly, it faded back to the image. I was horrified to see not the dead body of my character, but Cynthia in front, her sprite starting to lose color. She had shielded my character from the attack. Cynthia, in faded gray text, started begging Arceus for forgiveness, saying only Cyrus should be punished. Cyrus said it was hopeless, saying Arceus was under his control now. Cynthia then said it was not, saying it was furious that Cyrus caught it, and it will punish them all for his evil actions. All? Cyrus scoffed, saying any other traitor would have done the same, and that in the end, Arceus was still just a Pokemon. He claimed it will commit to him like every other Pokemon captured. He then ordered Arceus to kill Cynthia. Then, silence dots. I swallowed hard, anxious about what would happen. Finally, text read, Arceus used judgment. The red chain shattered. The distorted Arceus cry played again, but this time I saw what happened. A beam came down and struck Cyrus. When the beam cleared, all that remained of him was a pool of blood. I nearly screamed out loud as the screen began to shake and rumbling noises rang out. Cynthia continued to plead to Arceus for forgiveness, calling it God multiple times, but her sprite continued to lose its color. She was dying. The text boxes stopped, and I realized I could move my character. I approached Arceus, thinking I was finally going to battle it. However, to my shock and dismay, a text box appeared that said, Beg Arceus for forgiveness. A yes option appeared. There was not a no option. All I could do was select it. Another heart-stopping wave of complete silence fell upon this game that now deeply terrified me. I was hoping Arceus would calm down and I could finally battle it and catch it. Instead, I was met with this text. Arceus used judgment. I heard a low pitch, severely dragged out, static-infested noise I could not identify. It sounded like something was winding up. My eyes widened with horror, dreading what the grand finale of this horrendously hacked game would be. Finally, I heard a hyper-loud, hyper-high-pitched Arceus cry, and a white flash enveloped the screen. Silence again. Dead silence. Then, slowly, the white screen faded to black. It stayed like that for a few seconds. Then, a completely silent text box. This is what happens when people try to play God. The text box disappeared, and slowly, the word end appeared on the screen. Nothing happened. For 30 full seconds, the screen stayed that way. Every button I pressed did nothing. I had no choice but to turn off the 3DS. When I turned the game back on, I found my save was deleted, and a new game started. I turned it off again. I didn't want to go through that again. It took me a while to reach a conclusion about this modified game. This is what I managed to come up with. In this game I have named Pokemon Yellow Diamond. Team Galactic is not a team, but a cult. An insane cult led by Cyrus, who strived to use the creator of the universe to create a new world that he would rule over as a god. His subjects, the grunts and the nobles, lived only for him and his dreams. If they ever failed him, their purpose, their worthiness, would be gone. Rather than face their leader in shame, they chose to die. In this game, the people of the world did not merely see Arceus as a Pokemon, but the god of their world. They worshipped it, thanked it for all it had given them. To them, it was so much more than just a living creature. In this game, Arceus did not tolerate being captured in a Master Ball. Such a method with no effort or show of true strength was an inexcusable insult. Enraged, it killed the very trainer that attempted to use it. To this day, though, I can't figure out why it killed my character. Perhaps it thought I would have done the same thing. Honestly, I would have. Deity or not, even Arceus was helpless against the Master Ball. No effort, nothing. Just a single throw, and it's yours. No questions asked. It made me do some serious thinking. In this game, Cyrus is still the same. He still strives to create a new world where he could rule as a deity. Rule a world of his creation, where all would be as he decided, and everyone would bow to him. Until I played this game, I never realized just how severe and potentially consequential such a goal would be. It made more sense when his grunts started acting like brainwashed members of a cult, instead of arrogant, cocky, mischievous criminal thugs. I don't think I'll ever see him the same way again. After playing this game, a couple things have forever changed my ways as a Pokemon gamer. 1. If a price for a used game seems too good to be true, it is. Always consider an outrageously cheap game to be hacked. 2. From this day forward, I shall never use a Master Ball again. Doing so will only leave me feeling shameful. Now, I swear all captures will be legit. I will put all my effort into catching legendaries to prove myself worthy of their power. So when I finally face Arceus for real, I will not dishonor myself by using a Master Ball. I will prove to Arceus I am worthy of its power. As I write this, I realize just how messed up that thought truly is. I mean, in that hacked game, Arceus' true identity as the creator of the universe was emphasized. How could it be right for a mere mortal to capture a true, almighty deity and have it battle and perform to your desire and at your command? Is that why Arceus killed my character? Because it knew they would have that very same desire? Some would probably find the thought uneasy. But you know what they say. You gotta catch 'em all.